Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, Katie and I are going to be answering some of your questions. I tell you what, we love it when you take the time to go over to the question submission section of our website and submit your questions. It helps us know what you're discussing in your home, and then it gives us food for thought. And so we're going to go through a few of those questions that you have so thoughtfully submitted. If you have questions yourself and you don't know where you can ask those for the podcast, you can go to our website, nowthatwe'reafamily.com, and there is a question submission section there that you can navigate to. Or if there's a guest that you would really like to see us have on the podcast, you can recommend that guest there at the website. That's really probably the best place to do that. Anyways, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you're able to leave a rating or a review on any of the platforms that you listen on, or if you watch on YouTube, if you could like or subscribe to our channel, that's extremely helpful as well. So we'll get this thing going.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
Okay, do you want to kick us off with the first question, or you want me to?
I think you should start with the first question.
Okay, so okay.
Whoa, so you weren't ready.
No, okay, so I'm going to paraphrase. We're going to paraphrase these questions as Elisha is actually known for doing, because we have the computer here recording the audio, and I'm not going to read them directly. Okay, so one of you, awesome listeners, felt like you weren't real athletic as a child, and now you're seeing in your children this kind of like a little awkward pre-adolescent weight gain, a little clumsiness, and you're like, okay, well, how can we encourage this health and athleticism without just put them in sports? You know, for financial reasons, for family culture reasons, for faith reasons. That might be something this listener pursues down the road, but it's just not the right situation right now. All our kids, it sounds like, are under 10 years old, and she has a great regimen that she's on for herself with working out and things like that. But how would you encourage younger children that just aren't naturally super athletic? She would like to give that gift to them.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think that various sports can offer such mentally engaging aspects with the skill in and of itself, because sports, I mean, depending on which sport it is that you choose, they require technique, which then leads to coordination in order to apply that technique. And I think that if you kind of separate, what's my genetic makeup from the scenario, and say, okay, this is the body God's given me and my children. How do we optimize this body here on earth? And you're not looking at the results that maybe somebody with a different, genetic makeup is getting, and you actually just start embracing the skill of the sport, it can really actually lend to a lot more movement and exercise just by nature of learning the skill. And I've been blown away when people, this happened with me playing basketball growing up. I started in 5th grade. So not real young, but young enough. And there were kids that started with me that were like what you'd be like, okay, they didn't look like they were a real athletic kid. It looked like they spent a lot of time on the couch. And maybe you could even look at their siblings and their family and maybe kind of deduct the same thing. And yet with each year that passed, they developed skill. And then they became a huge asset on our team. And then they were able to start getting more and more athletic and more coordinated. And then by the time they're in high school, they're an athletic person. Like, I've seen that transpire before my eyes by somebody just embracing a particular sport, getting good at the skill, getting good at the teamwork, the strategy, and then the athleticism and the coordination follows suit. That's the first thing I thought of.
Okay, well, maybe I didn't specify this, but you're saying they don't really want to get into competitive sports.
Oh, I didn't. Did you say that?
I don't know if I did.
Sorry.
That's a funny thing when you aren't reading it. So I do think you're right. I think you're right on that. But I actually think that all those principles can be true, and actually even better, maybe if you operate as a family outside of the traditional sport system. It can even be all those benefits that Elisha was mentioning and more, because you aren't comparing yourself with the kids that maybe have the genetic makeup to be on what are like the special league baseball teams or like
the travel team.
Yeah,
or the
you know what
select
I'm
team.
saying? I was reading this book and I'm forgetting what it was. I don't know if it was. Okay, I'll try to find it. but it was one of those kind of like screen-free, get your kid outside books. We're standardizing things too young. We're pushing our kids to be competitive too young. And this author was saying that she grew up not very coordinated, but just loving sport for the sake of the sport. Like she loved ice skating in the winter, and she loved playing tennis with her siblings. And because she loved playing hopscotch and tag and capture the flag, and she never realized she wasn't great at these things because she was just having fun playing them. Whereas if she had gone into a school environment or a club environment, she probably would have felt like, I'm bad at these, I'm not going to do sports at all. And so sports for children used to be just, I think, a lot more friendly to the child, regardless of their development. And so maybe even if you aren't wanting to go into competitive sports, playing as a family, I think, is huge. So I didn't play a competitive sport until my freshman year of high school. Everything else was just family play. And I felt we played at a very small school. I was definitely behind the girls when it came to skill. But I was very coordinated. And it was just like I didn't have that specific skill very well. And that was from playing kickball with my dad when we were, I don't know, like 7, 8 years old, playing capture the flag. We would play ultimate frisbee in the yard, which is a really fun game. We played 3 flies up with the frisbee. He'd throw the football to us. And I mean, we were a family of girls. So this is what we did. We all mountain biked as a family. We all skied as a family. Mm-hmm. We all played soccer as a family. And then eventually, friends would tag on to our games. And this was all never organized at all. And so I do think that, like Elisha's saying, I think the sport in and of itself is a great route to pursue, but it doesn't have to be with a system bigger than your family and like the neighborhood kids.
Yeah, I agree. And even more currently, I know I brought up the basketball scenario, and now that I know this listener doesn't want to pursue organized sports, I'll say one more that is kind of more organized, but that's current day, and that's jujitsu. And it was so humbling going from playing things like basketball or playing golf or doing some skiing, feeling rather athletic for most of my life, and then starting jujitsu and feeling unathletic altogether because the movements were so foreign to me, and yet I was able to fixate on the skill. Like that was the challenge in and of itself, is like athleticism didn't serve me in that space. And that can be encouraging to somebody if they start something like jujitsu, where like when you're all starting out, athleticism doesn't play a huge role in how quickly you're able to progress in that particular sport. And I'm inspired every time I go to classes, the diversity of people that are starting jujitsu, in their 50s and their 60s. And like, this is the thing that's helping them move. And so I think you can do that with your children at a younger age. And again, it doesn't have to be an organized sport or going to jujitsu or gymnastics, but when you're able to get past the like, okay, let's just go for a run. Cause just like when you're not in shape and you're not prone to athleticism, just running is like torture. They're like, I'm just going to go run right now. That's torture. So if there's something that you can kind of distract yourself with and fixate on that gets you moving and you find yourself moving, I think that's the point I was trying to make. Because that's really where that's what's so humbling. There are so many people that I would say are objectively less athletic than me that dominate me in jujitsu because of the technique. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make is if you don't feel like you're naturally gifted and athletically, it's like, well, then embrace learning technique, embrace, and that will make you healthier. Because the point I think that they probably want is to just have a healthy life
for their children.
For their children.
And I think these are specifically like girls and stuff like that, which we wouldn't encourage to do jujitsu. But yes. And I think that you could do a lot of this stuff just at home. And honestly, just your excitement for what you are doing too. Like, Elisha mentioned running, but I fell in love with running as a 7-year-old because my dad would take me on mile runs, and then we do mile fun runs, and it was so fun. Everyone got a medal at the end, and right now our son, he's 8 and he goes on runs with Elisha, and that doesn't necessarily help with the coordination piece maybe so much, but this listener says that she has a workout regimen she loves. Bringing your daughter into that with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great. That could be bonding for you guys. It's teaching her lifelong, even if it's just weights and running and whatnot, that's teaching her a lifelong skill that will help her down the road. And so it doesn't have to be really fancy. It could be like on the weekends, you guys go on hike or you play a backyard game of anything. Like you can laugh and it's silly and you all feel dumb doing it. And like how bonding is that going to be for your family? I'll dribble a basketball, I'll, throw a Frisbee around, whatever, go to the park, play Frisbee golf even if you aren't ready to throw it and your kids aren't ready to catch it, try to play Frisbee golf. And we didn't even play with those racks with the metal cages or whatever on official courses. We would just say, okay, that tree over there, how many throws is it going to take to get to the tree? And we'd all have these big beater Frisbees and chuck them. Nice. So I feel like, Elisha's in the backyard this week with the boys and they have his set of golf clubs and he's working with them on their swing, so this isn't stuff where you have to, it doesn't have to be super official. If once a week you're doing something new, different, getting out of your comfort zone, and then your daughter is working out with you during the week, I think you'll see a lot of progress in her coordination and her confidence and health and all those things.
Yeah, something else is such a distracting thing. Like you say, oh, going for a walk, it might be boring to them, or going for a hike could be boring. There are so many hikes that are crazy engaging that in like, you don't realize that your legs are burning and you don't realize that you're, going miles. That just happened so recently with the boys, right? The trail that we were on was littered with berries. And so that was really fun and engaging, but it was a steep incline. Like it was a challenging hike. And there was a couple miles both ways. And they just loved it. And they were so engaged and so aggro on the trail, finding more and more berries and, going up ahead to hide so that they could jump out and scare me. And that's one of those things that is just such a lifelong joy, because that is something that I'm grateful for. Is going back to, I think sometimes the downside to the organized sports is that is all kids know when it comes to movement and exercise. Is I go to practice and I play my sport, and they haven't adopted a lifelong love of just being active. And organized sports are going to end, at some point in all of our lives. And the ability to just stay active and stay healthy is such a gift. And to actually enjoy that and have habits and routines and positive associations with that is a gift.
One last thing I'm thinking of are things like scooters, bikes, a trampoline. I feel like I owe a lot of coordination to just a trampoline. You could do so many things on that. So there's just so much you could do. You aren't trying to be an extreme athlete here. Sounds like you aren't trying to, get your daughter on the varsity team. You just want her to be healthy and a little more coordinated and confident. And I don't think it takes a lot to do that. You're headed in the right direction if you do something weekly.
I want to let you guys know that the Voteberg Music Academy Back to School campaign is still underway. You can use the code below to get 20% off your first month. Now that maybe you have a child that wants to learn the piano, the guitar, the fiddle, the ukulele, we've got courses for all of those things. At Voteberg Music Academy, you don't just get a weekly lesson, you get live calls with your teacher. You get to be part of the community where you're able to share your progress. You get physical badges mailed to your door when you accomplish certain benchmarks. Many more things you're able to do at Voteberg Music Academy. Check the link below to learn more. And we'll see you over at Voteberg Music Academy. Yes, I agree.
Then not at all.
Right. I totally agree.
Okay. What do you have?
So I'm going to paraphrase too. And I'm paraphrasing because this was actually at the request of the person asking the question. They asked, and I paraphrase, how do you teach your children humility and to engage with a humble heart, especially considering that they are raising their children as we are as well. We're raising our children counterculturally. And so our life is going to look different than many people that we encounter in the world, and our children's lives are going to look different. And they may even be ahead in some subjects, right? If you're going aggro in math, or if you're going aggro in fiddle or whatever, then you'll meet people where they're further ahead in certain subjects. And then also, you'll be behind in some subjects as well. But how do you teach an attitude of humility? And this person complimented us and said that they sense that we have spirits of humility. So thank you. And they also,
how do you say that?
And they also,
super sweet.
Said they were looking forward to how I was going to summarize the question.
I think you did pretty good. Pretty good. There was one thing at the end. I think they said we were one of the only podcasts they listen to, and the only Substack they pay to subscribe to.
Wow, thank you.
So we were just, speaking of humbled, we definitely were. So this listener was awesome. So I don't know what you would say for this, Elisha, but I feel like a spirit of humility. This isn't a guarantee, but the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. I feel like this typically follows like this. That's typically what follows. Knowledge in the pursuit of excellence is you realize how far you have to go and how much better people are. I feel like the most ignorant I have been at times is when I've gotten a small taste of something and think, well, I'm pretty close to average, probably. I think I get the gist.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I meet someone like Elisha in music. Okay, so like I played guitar, right? And I felt like I could play guitar, right? I just could play it. That is questionable looking at Elisha. He's like, really? But then I met Elisha, and Elisha was over here beating himself up like someone who's like a Christian ascetic. Is that how you say it? Ascetic. Like, I am not good at guitar. And he's comparing himself to like the top 1% in the world. Like, he didn't have like a Grammy or an award-winning something. And so therefore he must not be as good of a musician as he wanted to be. Okay. And so I felt like the more you knew about guitar, the more you realized you didn't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that probably carries over into every single category.
Yeah, that's why Elisha beats himself up, because you're actually really good at stuff.
No, I don't think that's
and
why.
I'm like, I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to feel bad about yourself in order to be humble.
No,
I don't think I want that.
No.
I want my kids to have confidence in their abilities and
Yes.
capabilities, but also have a spirit of humility, knowing, like, just factually, I think there is a way to teach. Well, I think there's two things. Like, you need the Lord to humble your heart. Like,
Yes.
like a haughty spirit, a proud heart, we know the Lord hates and he resists. And I also do think it takes a working of the Holy Spirit to humble us.
Like true humility. Yeah.
Right. And to like soften our hearts and to see our shortcomings in the light of his glory and his perfection. And also to see our shortcomings in the light of how we let our spouse down or we let our children down. And so I think it's something that you can pray for yourself and for your children. You can definitely pray for like that true spirit of humility. But then at the same time, I think you can teach your children just the facts of life. And that is that they don't know everything and they never will know everything. And everybody that they encounter in their, for the rest of their life will know something that they don't know, will have some piece of information that may or may not benefit them. Like, that's the whole point. It's just like, you don't know. You're like, this person might have something that could really benefit me in my life. And you've always been blown away with how much I listen to people. And it's like, I want to succeed in life. To me, like, it's a lifeline when I hear people talking, and because I know matter of factly that they have something, that they know things that I don't know, and they're going to be better at things than me. And this goes like across the board, right? Like, if you're talking to a homeless guy, like if you're talking to the barista, if you're talking, like, they're going to have something that you don't have, and it actually may be of value to you. And so I think you can teach that concept to your kids, even strategically, and they might take it in you can apply that in a very selfish way. I think I have at various times in my life where it's like, I go and I'm going to a conference or I'm going to meet somebody and I just want to get out of it as much information as I can. And it might look like I'm being humble and just keeping my mouth shut, but I'm really in it for myself. In those scenarios. And I don't think that's wrong necessarily in that context.
You want to learn as much as you can for that person.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think there are like the practicality of teaching your children the facts about how they don't know everything, and it would behoove them to listen. And that same goes for me, same goes for all of us as adults, and then pray for a humble spirit. I mean, I'm sure there's other things too.
Yeah, two things came to mind that our parents did really well, I think. One is Elisha and I both have vivid recollections of our parents, or especially our fathers as the leaders of our households, asking for forgiveness. And that is something that I think was modeled in our homes, and we were able to admire and look up to our fathers and also know that they were imperfect and they were willing to recognize that. So that practice of humility from a visual standpoint was so instrumental, I think, in both of our lives. I think another thing was the reading of the Proverbs, reading how God resists the proud. He gives grace to the humble. You know, if we don't humble ourselves, the Lord will humble us.
Yes.
And so there is this, there's a fear that goes with that in a healthy way of, I don't want the Lord to have to humble me. We don't want the Lord to have to humble us. And there's so many scriptures. I mean, in a multitude of counselors, there's safety. There's verses about criticism in scripture, and just reading the Proverbs over and over and over and over really like catechizes you, I feel like, on humility and how God views the proud. And so I would say that's one of the biggest things I would encourage. I think a myth, I guess, that I kind of jokingly led into at the beginning of this question was that the more knowledgeable you are, the more successful you are, or the better you are at something, then that goes a lot hand in hand with how prideful you are in that thing. And that certainly can be the case, but you can also be ignorant or not good at anything and just be a scoffer. And scripture speaks to that, how there are fools that just sit back and scoff at everything. They can't learn from anyone. They don't ask anyone's advice. And it doesn't mean they're good at anything. So I think in wanting our children to strive for excellence, if God willing, he allows that. It's not because they're better than anyone else. It's God requires of us our full service to him. If we're capable of excellence, we should give him our excellence because it is his ultimately, and realizing that every good thing comes from God.
Yeah, this is something else.
It's a free gift.
I agree. This is something else that this question included was they don't want their children to feel like they're better than anybody else that they encounter. Even though they might be doing something differently and they might seem like they might be further ahead objectively in some, quantifiable way. And I do think that, again, going back to perspective and, I don't know, like I've just been more and more humbled when I look at the gifts in my life, the blessings of my life, and then I just do a little bit of family history. Like I only have to go back to my grandpa, but if I can make it back to my great grandpa, I'm like, whoa. I am humbled by how hard my grandparents worked on my behalf. Like, sure, they didn't know me when they were doing this work, but they were doing it for their children and their grandchildren. And then I'm humbled by how hard my dad worked. And so if somebody might look at me and say, hey, you're objectively more successful than this person at the same, you're both the same age and you're objectively more successful in this area. I'm humbled. And I'm like, it's actually because of I can go back to my grandfather and my father and the hard work that they did. And that doesn't make me prideful at all. It makes me feel a responsibility and a burden. I mean, it can be burdensome, and it makes me want to steward that very well. And I think that we can do that with our kids as well. It's like, hey, you've been given a very unique opportunity in this given area that you are thriving. And then also, and then I'm going to tie this into another point, because you were talking about, I don't know if I fully agree with people that pursue excellence or find excellence. I don't know if it automatically makes you more humble. Because I do think what a danger is people fixate on their specialty and they never get outside their specialty, and they might be successful in their own little world there, but have no care or interest for anybody outside their orbit, whether that's in an academic sense or in an athletic sense or in a musical sense, really in any given area. And so you can walk around puffed up because you're good at your little thing, but it's the whole interested people are interesting people, that phrase. If you're able to give your kids a bigger worldview and let them know, like, okay, yeah, you're crushing math this year. Like, math is a small part of life. Like, it's a very great part of life, but life is huge. There are many things that people are good at, and all of those things are valuable and can bring value to the world. And so you can praise those people that might be further behind you in math for the things that they are good at. And then, and you can, I think, you can do that with any category, just in realizing, like, yeah, this is my strength. I'm not just going to fixate on this. I'm going to steward the strength, but then appreciate other people for their strengths and realize they're different than mine.
Yeah, I do think it is a character issue if we're struggling with pride, character or sin. And I mean, I go in and out of that for sure. It's a struggle, as sin is. But I feel like I think parenting attitudes have a lot to do with it. I think when we're communicating to our children, I'm having a hard time here. When we're communicating to our children, hey, we want you to try your best because you're capable of a lot here. Not telling them, hey, well, you're better than so-and-so. Or, if they make a comment like that, reminding them, hey, they're trying just as hard as you're trying, or yeah, I'm really proud of you for working so hard at this. You've grown a lot, but we're never going to put someone else down. Look at this. Look at how they're good at this over here. And so there are certain things that I think as parents we're helping our children navigate that. But I do feel like, to push back a little bit, Elisha, that I do feel like, for instance, even starting this podcast 7 years ago versus now, how the Lord has shown me how little I know in life. I think that's something that can come with age and can come with more knowledge, is the understanding that there are so many people that know so much more than you do. Mm-hmm. So I do think that can happen for sure.
I agree. Learning, I think, brings humility.
Yeah, I really do. Just in any area, like the more you know, the more you realize, whoa, that person really has an expertise in that area. Mm-hmm. Or, so I'm not saying the pursuit of knowledge is the pursuit of humility. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say, though, is that I don't think we have to be scared of the pursuit of knowledge if it is done in grace, in humility before Christ, knowing that all things come through him, in a sense of duty and obligation, like Elisha said, to like a responsibility. Mm-hmm. I want our children to feel the responsibility of working heartily as unto the Lord, not to just gain badges to flash in public, Yeah. And same with us as parents, we feel a responsibility to steward our children to the best of our ability, to push them, to guide them, to let off when we need to, not so that we can parade them around like little poster children, right?
Yeah, I agree. And also, like, life is so full of ups and downs. And so in 5th grade, your kid could be crushing something and be so far behind 3 years later. Yes. And the highest scorers, going back to my basketball career, since that's fresh in my mind, the guys that scored all of our points on 5th grade did not make the varsity team, in high school. Right. Like they peaked at this certain time frame and then their life changed. And that actually doesn't just end with your childhood and high school and people that peak in high school. I think of that even when people, hit what you would say like, the top of the food chain in their later years. It's like, well, maybe like they can still crash and burn, or they can still have a huge demise. And so I just think realizing that like life is full of wins and losses. It's the old, Rudyard Kipling poem, treat triumph and disaster, treat those two imposters just the same. Triumph and disaster, right?
Yeah, triumph and disaster.
And treat those two imposters just the same, because they are so temporary. Mm-hmm. They can be. And I think having that attitude with your kids, like, hey, you won, awesome. Like you put in so much hard work, and then they lost. Be like, hey, I'm glad you played your best. Like they were better than you. That's another thing that this book talks about. Yeah, so always having a longer term perspective and the overall character development of your child than just, man, how'd they do in this grade, or how'd they do at this competition or in this sporting event.
And I mean, obviously we're in the thick of this. These are theories, okay? All we can give you is theories. We've got an 8-year-old and we're still learning this. But I would also say exposing them to greats. If they play music, expose them to great musicians. When our children hear other musicians, they realize how far they have to go. And yeah, they might be better than Freddie next door who's never picked up a fiddle, and they might feel like hot stuff, right? But then, they go to a competition that's really big and they hear the grandmaster, they see these other little whiz kids and they're like, whoa, I've got a lot to learn, or they hear bluegrass on the radio. Or with art, they might feel pretty talented, and that's great. I never want my job as a parent to be undercutting my kids' confidence and calling it humility. I think that's kind of an old school parenting tactic that I don't really think works out that well. I do think praising our children for a job well done means a lot to a child, but then exposing them to great artists or great literature, whatever they're good at, expose them to the greats. And I think that has a humbling effect. And the ultimate humbling effect, I really do think, is our Creator and His Word. Everything should be held in check by that. Because if we think we're all that, we just don't have a big enough view of God.
Yeah, amen. But I mean, this can be the last thing I say, and we can move on. But you already said this. Just apologizing as a parent, like exemplifying that act of saying, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. Will you forgive me?" And not continuing on. It's that whole don't complain, explain, or blame. That's you start hearing it, whether in yourself or in other people, half-baked apologies and if you can do an honest apology in front of your kids to your spouse, if I can do that, or you do it to your children, or they see you do it to whoever, somebody that you wronged in business or somebody that you wronged at church, and say, hey, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? An actual apology. Those are rare. And I think that the sooner you can start doing that and exemplifying that, it just does wonders for your kids.
Yeah. So good luck on that. May your children be bright and humble. Okay. Kind of piggybacking on that. A mother asked, how do you encourage your children to love learning? She has a 6-year-old son who is, I love how you phrased this, by the way. She said, is a fatalist when she tries to get him to do stuff. And I don't know. I feel like oldest children can be so dramatic, and I just think that's fun. But it's starting to have kind of a souring effect on learning with the whole household. And I can relate to this because as the eldest goes, kind of so the rest of the family goes. So it's great when you have the eldest on your side because it really helps with the culture in the home. What would you say, Elisha?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind as a father is really making learning exciting. I don't do the hands-on teaching like you do.
Yeah, you do.
I mean, with music. Yeah, with music I do. But as far as their academics, I'm pretty, hands off. But I think what they're doing is awesome. And I think that is a unique role that the father, especially the father in a homeschool home, has. And that is leading. Like, maybe you're not doing the teaching, but you can actually still be you need to still be the leader in the children's education. And the last thing you want to do is undermine what your wife is teaching them, right? You can come in, and if she's got them doing multiplication tables, or she's got them doing some exercise that they think is boring or they don't enjoy, and you give any hint at saying, like, basically giving them anything to stand on, like that you think it is silly, or you think it's not
or they'll never
helpful.
use that.
The classic, they'll never use that. Like, you can't do that as a father. You have to encourage the work and encourage what it is they're doing. And then at some point you might have to even discipline. You're saying, like, hey, this is a total attitude issue. And you've got to be obedient here, and you need to change your attitude and change your heart. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think other ways that you lead aside from the practical hands-on stuff with teaching is in the evenings, sometimes like the other night you pulled out, the spelling book and we're just quizzing the kids on their spelling words. And all of a sudden they were stoked to show off how much they knew. And it made our lesson the next day so much more fruitful because they were so proud of what they'd done and Daddy had taken interest in it. Likewise, you'll ask the kids to recite poetry or recite verses or the catechism or things like that.
Yeah, we do math problems.
Yeah, you do math problems.
Yeah.
So Elisha just comes up with, and this is in the evening, we're all sitting around during Bible time, and he comes up with these funny math problems, and the kids can't wait to do their math problem. And those are all ways that Elisha's validating the work I'm doing throughout the day. And so I'm so grateful for that because our children view us as a team in their education, and Daddy and Mama are on the same page and that this is worthwhile for them to do. So I'm so grateful for that. And I think it has a huge influence on our homeschool. I think too, I do think that the eldest is worth winning over, but also not everything has to be fun. And there's a big character element to academics, like huge. So kind of seeing this as what do they call the law to bring us to the schoolmaster? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but it's like, this is a tough thing that you have to bear, and it's going to make your character stronger. Mm-hmm. And so putting that on your child, and if they're going to treating the discipline side of it seriously, if they're going to be undisciplined, they get more work. If they're going to have a bad attitude, they get more work. I would just dump on that child work until they're going to do it gratefully with a happy heart and not complaining. And we've had that in our home. And this might sound dramatic or extreme, but I found it to be the best course of action as if a child is, especially the oldest, is fighting on, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Starting a timer can be helpful to just kind of break the rut, say, hey, I'm giving you 5 minutes to get this done. Otherwise, you're going to get more of a workload. Or just adding to their workload until they learn to enjoy it. Because momentum in an area, becoming good at something, it becomes enjoyable, whether you like it or not. And so this is actually one reason why we kind of scaled back our whole homeschool for the first 3 years of our kids' education and really just did math and reading, because those were such difficult subjects and they're tough subjects to get momentum in. And so I just would rather hammer these concepts and have the kids start to feel like, I'm good at this, I'm confident, I'm capable, okay, blah, 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 blah. Instead of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and having them really not feel like they were really, like everything was always new and hard. Does that make sense? I also think a couple other things are consistency. So when children know what they can expect every single day, they dig in a lot easier and just get it done because it has to be done before they play or whatever the thing is. So if you're hitting a subject that's difficult for the child, once every 3 days, they're going to kind of balk you on it, versus Monday through Friday, you have to do this every single day. And they just start getting through it. So I think consistency is really big, having the kids know what to expect, knowing what they have to get done. And if you're consistent on that for a couple of weeks, they're going to stop giving you a hard time about it. And then I do think there are so many times my mom sat me down as the eldest and was like, hey, Katie, everybody's looking to you. If you say this meal's gross, everybody's going to think it's gross. You're really helping me in setting the tone for the younger kids because they look up to you. And so I just felt like my mom was inviting me to be on her team, and it wasn't in this antagonistic way. I felt like, oh, she needs me. And that really, I always really appreciated when she would do that. And I felt really special and like I should work harder to help out and have just more of that weight of responsibility. I think eldest kids like the weight of responsibility more often than not, and like that leadership position. So anyways, those would be a few things. If you hate the subjects that you're teaching your child, that's going to get brought up, that's going to pass through to them too. So finding a teaching style or a method or a curriculum or something that you can genuinely get excited about and teaching them. And then just realizing you're going to go through ups and downs. Like making learning fun is a gift and a joy. And we have a lot of fun in our homeschool, but I would say every single day there's a child that does not want to do a certain subject. And it's just the way it is. You just got to do the subject. And 3 days later, they're so proud of what they've learned. They're grateful that you were the parent and made them do the work.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Here.
So many things there. Okay. Do you take notes when you read, and how do you retain what you learn?
Sometimes I always have my journal with me when I'm reading the Bible. I take notes. I'm not one for underlining, especially since we started buying nicer books. Like we definitely don't underline. You're an underliner.
It's like
No,
I don't underline like our leather bound copies.
Right.
I don't. It kills me.
Yeah, but you're a big time underliner. I'm not so much. I take a quote and write it down and take notes about what I learned in my journal.
Yeah, so Elisha does that. I think a big part of how we retain is kind of a Charlotte Mason method of narration and repeating back what we've read. We do this to each other like crazy. Like the amount of words that we say to each other on any given day is a lot. And I feel like we're mentally processing what we've either listened to or read or conversations we've had. And I feel like it's a form of retaining and processing and all that. So, I don't know what you'd say to that.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you're right.
The podcast. They say the teacher learns the most. So anytime we're learning something and trying to digest it to be able to communicate it, that results in a lot of conversation on our end, a lot of more, chasing down rabbit trails, and then trying to communicate clearly on here, I think helps. So I don't take notes. Yeah, I draw directly in the books and destroy them. This one is from a gal saying so she was saying specifically, she's really proud of her husband. She loves her husband a lot. He's an incredible man. But she feels like in her community, women are always talking about how difficult their marriages are. And she doesn't know if she should really say how great her marriage is or not. She wants to brag about her husband, but she also doesn't want to make people feel bad.
Yeah, I think it's probably you want to honor your husband in that situation. And so maybe trying to figure out what the best way is to honor him in those situations. Maybe he doesn't want to be talked about at all, in public situations. Or maybe it would mean the world to him if you were to sing his praises. And I really do think that it comes down to the man. There are some men that were like, they're not words of affirmation. And so they don't care that much about whether or not their wife speaks well of them.
Speaks of them.
Speaks of them. Exactly. Like it comes up in conversation. And so I think that, I think that's where, like, you want to honor God, you want to honor your husband, and then whether or not you make these ladies feel good or don't feel good should be tertiary, right? Like, you want to encourage them and you want to speak appropriately for the situation. But I think that's how I would approach it.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I do, always speaking well of your husband or your spouse. But I would also say, I think it was funny, but we were just in a conversation recently where I was talking with some friends over something we were reading, and marriages came up and stuff like that. And it was interesting because it wasn't the right time to share, because sometimes your perspective on your marriage might kind of be, like lemon juice in a wound, in a paper cut, know? And sometimes our happiness, as much as we would love for people to always be happy when we're happy, I think I'm probably way too slowly realizing this, but our happiness is not always best shared. Like sometimes it's something that's a gift between you and your spouse, and you get to enjoy that gift, and it can almost come off as flaunting it to share too much. I feel like, I feel like I've totally fallen on that side of the ditch where just being too vocal about our marriage instead of being like, you know what, if our marriage is going through a hard time, that's for us to know. If our marriage is in a very sweet spot, that's for us to know. And learning to be more private about
I think
that.
Discretion around marriage is an honorable thing and can be a generally good thing.
And I say that coming from a place where I do not think I've walked this out well on our podcast at all. Up
Nor
to present day. So I think because this is a public platform and we have talked about marriage, I think I just haven't really preserved maybe a privacy that should be just reserved for our marriage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I were just talking about this afternoon.
Yeah, we were.
We do want to get better at that. Like we care so much about our marriage and we want it to be ours. Like we want it to be between you and I. And we do, that's how we want to go more and more in that direction. It's probably, not going to look like that for a while, but that is our heart right now.
And I do think like if you have I do think the world needs more encouragement around marriages, being like, hey, God has designed this beautiful thing and it can be good. So I think that can be good. But I also think that like anything, it can turn into maybe a comparison trap.
Yeah.
Or, something where it just makes people feel worse about the difficulties they're going through. So I think the fact that you're asking this question, the answer. I think what should be brought up and what could be encouraging and what could be speaking well of your husband, and then what could be a brag in terms of just making other people feel bad. And that's an area I want to grow in general.
Same. Yeah. Same.
So, okay, that's all I've got.
Nice. Well, folks, thank you for asking these questions. They were great food for thought. I hope that you think so as well. And with all that said, we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.